participants to please settle down. We will start in a few moments. Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome to the 24th Jaime V. Ongpin Annual Memorial Lecture. To formally begin this event, let us start with the Philippine National Anthem, to be followed by an invocation of God's blessings by Father Raymond Benedict Hizon, S.J.
Magiliw, pelas ang sinanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiin. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bukaw, may nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhati pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hinigaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Just over the weekend, Pope Leo had an online session with some 15,000 young people in the US where he intentionally addresses artificial intelligence, he says, as a defining feature of our times, pointing out that safety is not only about controlling the development of AI, but also about empowering people to make healthy decisions through education and personal responsibility. This morning we heed Pope Leo's timely words and gather in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, you sent us your Son to lead us back to you and to help us turn to each other in truth, in love, and mercy. Your Son Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So send us your Spirit today and always, that we may learn to use every tool you inspired us to create to support our journey of faith, our intellectual development, and the building of a just society and nation. May our use of AI and the many tools you have given us not limit our true human growth, so that, as your vicar reminds us, we should use every gift, AI included, in such a way that even without them, and certainly with it, we would still and always know how to think, create, judge, and act on our own, knowing that for all the good they do, these tools can never replace the unique gift that we are to each other, to the world, and to discourse in general. Help us always to think, to choose, and always act responsibly, wisely, and well, using the tools we have with both care and caution. We do this in his name, who worked with his hands and all of his heart and all of his mind, using the very tools of his trade for neighbor, our good, and indeed the life of the world, Jesus the Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Father Hizon. May I request our speaker and a reactor to please take their seats in front. So good morning, everybody. My name is Ronald Chua of the Ateneo School of Law, and I will be your moderator for today's event. We are happy to welcome you to this year's Jaime V. Ongpin Lecture. This event is co-organized by the Office of University Development and Alumni Affairs. The JVO Annual Memorial Lecture was inaugurated in 2001 to help raise awareness of Filipino people about pressing national development issues. In order to empower them to actively engage in nation building, delivered by business leaders, senior government officials, and leading academics, the lectures tackle critical important themes in the nexus of democracy and development, including climate change, corruption, education, federalism, globalization, health inequity, poverty, and national leadership. Aimed to keep alive the spirit of which Jaime V. Ongpin lived his life, the willingness to risk comfort and safety, wealth, and personal security for the sake of freedom and democracy, and thus the greater good of our people and country. The lecture series hopes to bring together business and government leaders and Filipinos from every walk of life in a continuing national conversation on the present situation and the future direction of the country. Now, on its 24th year, the lecture will delve into artificial intelligence in the Philippines as both catalyst for disinformation and a powerful tool to combat it, highlighting the role and responsibilities of AI use and development as an emerging implement towards safeguarding democracy and upholding the integrity of public discourse. As political and digital spaces coalesce and as disinformation continues to rise in a continually expanding digital landscape, unfettered by conventional boundaries and restrictions, emergent technologies such as artificial intelligence raise relevant questions on the status quo of digital spaces and the conduct of these implements on aspects of governance and public interest and national security. We would like to acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Maribel Ongpin, the Ongpin family, and the administrators of the Ateneo de Manila University. We would also like to greet our online audience, alumni and friends, who are tuning in today via the live stream on the Ateneo YouTube channel. Before we proceed to today's discussion, may I invite Father Roberto C. Yap, SJ, President of the Ateneo de Manila University, to deliver the welcome remarks.
Good morning and welcome to the 24th Jaime V. Ongpin Annual Memorial Lecture on Public Service and Government. This lecture serves not only as a tribute to JVO, but also as a platform for meaningful discourse on issues that shape our country. Let me begin by expressing our gratitude to Ms. Maribel Ongpin, whose generosity allows us to honor her late husband's enduring legacy through this annual lecture series. Jaime V. Ongpin was a visionary thinker who embodied the ideals of truth, justice, and ethical governance. His influence continues to inspire countless individuals to work toward positive change and contribute to nation building. Today, we explore a critical topic, artificial intelligence, AI, and its role in combating disinformation. In this digital era, AI technologies offer a myriad of benefits, from optimizing workflows and minimizing errors to fostering innovation and providing insightful solutions to address global challenges such as climate change, food security, and public health. While AI has ushered in remarkable innovation, it also presents unique challenges. Unfortunately, there will always be individuals who will seek to exploit AI-generated content to intentionally mislead and manipulate the public for their own agendas. In the Philippines, the rise of AI cannot be overlooked. According to the Reuters Institute Digital News Report released in June, this marks the first time since 2012 that AI chatbots have been categorized as a news source. The report also cites that in the Philippines, 9% of Filipinos are now turning to AI chatbots to get their news. Furthermore, the 2025 World Economic Forum Global Risk Reports highlights that misinformation and disinformation pose significant risks over the next 2 years. The reality urges us to address the growing threat of misinformation and disinformation. Whether we represent educational institutions, private enterprises, governmental or non-governmental organizations, we must collectively reaffirm our responsibility to counter threats that could exacerbate polarization and create rifts in our society, hindering our efforts toward national unity. Addressing this pressing issue requires concerted action, including strengthening fact-checking initiatives. This is where AI can also play a critical role. Today's lecture presents a valuable opportunity for us to benefit from the insights, experiences, and wisdom of Dr. Didith Rodrigo, Professor of the Department of Information Systems and Computer Science and Head of the Ateneo Laboratory for the Learning Sciences. In her research, Dr. Rodrigo emphasizes that AI in education must be grounded in culture, responsive to students' lived experiences, classroom realities, and national contexts. Drawing from both global and Philippine examples, she has illustrated how cultural factors influence the success of AI-based educational tools and how equitable design can empower under-resourced communities. It is our shared hope that this lecture will help us harness the capabilities of AI, not only to enhance human potential, but also to promote social responsibility. Thank you very much, and I look forward to an engaging discussion, wishing everyone a warm and inspiring morning.
Thank you very much, Father Bobby. Now let me introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Maria Mercedes T. Rodrigo, or Dr. Didith, is a professor at the Department of Information Systems and Computer Science of the Ateneo de Manila University. She is presently the head of the Ateneo Laboratory for the Learning Sciences and co-leads the Ateneo Virtual, Augmented, and Mixed Reality Laboratory. Her research work focuses on artificial intelligence in education, learning analytics, and educational games. In collaboration with colleagues and students, Dr. Rodrigo's publications focus on artificial intelligence in education, learning, analytics, and educational games. She is currently president of the Asia Pacific Society for Computers in Education and was the recipient of the Society's 2021 Distinguished Research Award. She is a member of the Executive Committee of the Artificial Intelligence Education Society and also serves on the editorial boards of several high-impact journals, including Artificial Intelligence in Education, the Internet and Higher Education, and Research and Practice in Technology-Enhanced Learning. She is a conference chair in the upcoming 2025 International Conference for Computers in Education and is a program committee chair and co-chair in the upcoming 2026 Global Research Alliance of Jesuit Universities inaugural symposium and 2026 Educational Data Mining Conferences, respectively. Outside of academia, Dr. Rodrigo is an accomplished children's book author, winning the National Children's Book Award, Kids' Choice Award for Made Perfect in Weakness in 2016, the 12 Cardinal Sin Catholic Book Awards for Cave Dweller in 2018, and the National Children's Book Award, Kids' Choice Award, and finalist for the Cardinal Sin Catholic Book Awards for her book Blue Plate in 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Didith.
Hello, good morning, Father Bobby, Ms. Ongpin, Ms. Burnsie, VP Janice Bello, and Father RB. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this tremendous honor to be here today. If I may be allowed to start on a personal note, this opportunity is quite poignant for me because Mr. Jaime Ongpin was actually my father's boss. When Mr. Ongpin was the Secretary of Finance, my father, Benvenido Tan, was Commissioner of the Bureau of Internal Revenue. And I hope this connection does not make me a Nepo baby. So I'm here to present to you a compressed version of the paper, Fighting Fire with Fire, Learning Artificial Intelligence's Latent Power Against Disinformation. This was a paper co-written with Rear Admiral Rommel Jude Ong, Karen Claire Garcia, Charisse Erin Flores, and Joanna Marion Torres. Rear Admiral Ong, Ms. Garcia and Ms. Flores are with the Ateneo School of Government, and Joe Torres is with my lab. Okay. The paper is quite long and quite dense, and I know that I only have 20 minutes, so I hope you'll forgive me for condensing the content. The full paper is available at this link, and it may be downloaded free of charge. So if you would like to go into more detail, the paper is free for you to access. All right. The motivation behind this report is that the state of democracy around the world is under threat. Freedom House charts for the 18th consecutive year of global democratic decline in 2023, and the Bertelsmann Foundation's Transformation Index, visualized on this slide, shows that the world faces a global trend towards autocratic rule, with 74 autocracies now outnumbering 63 democracies. Information warfare has become digitally enabled, with the digital space's influence extending to information operations, political and social subversion, malicious influence, and foreign interference. AI supercharges disinformation. While humans continue to contribute significantly to the crisis, purveyors of disinformation are now adept at producing AI-generated visuals, audio, and written content, hence increasing the ease of distorting the truth and making it more challenging to discern. In this presentation, I'll take you through some of the basic definitions of AI and some of its broad application areas. I'll share the results of a series of interviews that we conducted with Philippine academics, business people, government officials, and members of civil society on use cases, enabling environments, and regulatory needs within the Philippine context, and I'll end with some policy recommendations. First, let's start with definitions. But first, a question. So how many in this room actually use AI? Okay, lots of hands, lots of hands. And there are a few who did not raise their hands, but let me tell you this. If you've used any of these applications at all, you are using AI, or AI is using you. By the way, this is a very short list. There are many more that will not fit on this slide. Okay, all of these applications make use of AI. So what is AI? So AI is an area of computer science, which is my home discipline. It's an area of computer science that is concerned with the creation of systems that can perform tasks that are usually associated with human intelligence or that require human intervention. The term AI also refers to the actual systems that execute these tasks. AI this is actually an illustration from a textbook on AI, so bear with me. But this is one way to think about AI. It's called the agent-based artificial intelligence, where you have an environment. You have an environment. So you have the world around you that provides some kind of stimulus. The stimulus is received by sensors of some kind, and in the box that's labeled agent, it processes that information in some way, and then decides what actions to take in response to those stimuli. What is in that box, the one that with the question mark, is where the intelligence is. And the intelligence can be crafted in a number of ways. It can be handcrafted or hand-engineered, which is to say that you can consult with a group of experts and codify whatever rules they can give you. Right? You write up these rules in the form of a computer language, put it into the box, and you have AI. Hand engineering, though, is time-consuming. Furthermore, whatever it is that you produce from hand engineering will invariably be incomplete. And this is where machine learning comes in. So machine learning is a subfield of AI which models phenomena in the world based on large quantities of data. These models can improve from experience without additional programming. So machine learning is a subset of AI. If you would like an example of AI at work, you can play this game. And it's called Quick Draw. And I will not play it in front of you, but you're, if you would like to scan the QR code, you can play essentially Pictionary with a Google developed AI. But it gives you an idea of how flexible a model can be. Now, deep learning is a subset of machine learning, and what deep learning is it creates it's machine learning that makes use of brain-like architectures called neural networks to learn from data. So it tries to simulate the human brain, and deep learning is actually what makes generative AI possible. Generative models, the ones that we know of, actually, Father Bobby, as we greeted each other at the door, he said, "Hindi ka pa ba nagsasawa?" Because we just keep talking about AI, and I couldn't answer right away. But basically, what I wanted to say was, I've never been this popular. Thank you, ChatGPT. So, but as you can tell from my hair, I've been around a long time, but I've never been this popular. Okay, so I'm enjoying it while it lasts. Okay, the generative models are deep learning models that create statistical representations of whatever their training data is. In response to user prompts, they can create text, audio, images, video, but they have no understanding of what it is that they're doing and what it is that they're creating. They have an internal statistical model, and they compute what is most likely to be the best answer for a particular prompt. Okay, now I'm going to try to do something really brave and change screens. Okay, yay. Okay, so this is an example. You've all seen ChatGPT, of course, but I don't know how many of you have actually seen Suno and Sora. So Suno is a music generation app, and I'm going to just play this really quick, really briefly. Okay. Okay. Okay, so all of that is, it's okay. Okay. All of that is computer generated. The voice, the music, the lyrics, everything. Okay, and once again, I'm going to try to, yeah. And then this is something you might have already seen. So these are computer generated videos using Sora. But of OpenAI. And take note, this was actually the first release of Sora, which was a couple of years ago. More recently, Google came out with Veo 3, which can now do voice.
Don't tell me you forgot again, Sia. Ayyo, Amma, I'm eating what now? Priya, you bought the muruku for Deepavali or not? Don't tell me you forgot again, Sia. Ayyo, Amma, I'm eating what now?
Okay, so the criticism of Sora in the beginning is that it couldn't do audio, but Veo 3, which is the most recent version of the Google video generator, can not only do video, but you can see that it can do sound as well, including voices. And it can do, one of these tests was if you could generate a video of someone eating. Old versions were quite distorted, but here, well, she doesn't actually put the food in her mouth, but you can find videos that where people are actually eating quite complicated things like noodles, and it looks like the real thing. So this is AI now. Okay, and once again, I will try to switch screens. Okay, yes. So this is the stuff that generative AI can do. So what are AI's broad uses? And take note that when I mention these things, I'm not limiting myself to the uses of Gen AI, but AI in general. So in the military, AI is used for warfare systems, strategic decision making, data processing, research, combat simulation, cybersecurity, and so on. And you have examples of robotics, for example. These robot dogs are I think being deployed in the U.S. already. There are in civil society. I mentioned, I think, and actually even Father Bobby mentioned uses in healthcare, finance, social media. I've mentioned things like gaming. There is, because my area is education, I of course have to mention an application in education. So in India, I'm going to try to play this. Let's see if it works. All right, if that doesn't work, it is working. Okay, maybe not. All right, so Iris is, wait, let me do this again. Okay. Anyway, Iris was an AI teacher developed in India. It's basically a mannequin, but it's powered by ChatGPT. So students can actually have a conversation with Iris and get tutorials, they can ask questions. Iris can teach a class if necessary, and who knows, this may be the future of my job. Okay, all right. Next, what we're here for. What is AI's role in disinformation? So a couple of definitions. Fake news comes in two forms: misinformation and disinformation, and both involve the spread of false information, but they differ in their intent and creation. So misinformation refers to dissemination of inaccurate information without the intention to harm. It could be just a misunderstanding, versus disinformation, which is deliberately fabricated, and the intent is to deceive and cause harm, often for personal gain. AI has accelerated and democratized the capacity to create deepfakes, synthetic text, images, audio, video of events that never took place. So there is a deepfake of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that was circulated in 2023, and in it he called on Ukrainian soldiers to lay down their arms. This was, as I said, it's a fake. It really was a fake. And then in January 2024, an AI-generated voice of US President Joe Biden called residents of New Hampshire, telling them not to vote during presidential primaries. The originator of the fake voice was never found, but the effort was a campaign to harm Biden and the democratic process. Generative AI has the potential to inundate media with deepfakes, misinformation, synthetic content. And the Philippines has been designated patient zero in the context of global disinformation, largely attributable to the significant prevalence of misinformation during the 2016 Philippine elections. The situation has been exacerbated over time by malicious actors who continue to develop innovative strategies for disseminating false information. The Philippine government has not been idle. It has responded by enacting several laws to prevent our citizens. This is just a partial list. And now I'll change gear a little and talk about the data that we collected from representatives from industry, academia, and civil society. The purpose of these interviews was to gauge the Philippines' capacity to support AI and to develop technologies using AI, as well as to identify some of the gaps that we need to address. 14 experts were gathered in a series of interviews, and the study used purposive sampling in selecting its key informants. The study was funded by the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. The Philippine industry and academia are already poised to make extensive use of AI, both generative and non-generative. Within industry, the two most common applications are fraud detection and money laundering, as well as personalized campaigns. AI-based systems can help human resources departments track professional development needs and provide them with individualized experiences to ensure growth. Now, Filipino academics are both users and creators of AI systems. One of the examples is pictured here is Dr. Jose Rubrico, who creates world-class AI products, including remote processing and remote sensing applications and autonomous robots. AI's enabling environment is composed of data, technology, and infrastructure. And at the core of this is data. So data must be of good quality. It needs to be cleaned and it must be complete. The technology infrastructure includes the basics of hardware and software, but more and more we need cloud storage simply because of the size of the data that we use and the amount of computing processing power that we need. And then you need human resources. These are critical to the use of AI. Some large corporations have a mix of internal and external expertise, but to not have any internal expertise would be to be at the mercy of the vendors. So it's very important to have these internal expertise. Okay, both industry and academic key informants affirmed the need for ethical and regulatory policies. Users and creators of AI applications need to be cognizant of safety, security, and intellectual property implications. And governance in this case refers to internal systems that monitor and ensure the safety and security of AI systems and their uses. Based on our interviews, we can see that we as a country have the internal capacity and expertise. We have the education and the awareness. What we seem to lack is scale, and what we need is scale. So how do we move forward and how do we scale? The paper ends with several recommendations that I'll go through briefly, and not all of them, just a few. So first is a call for a national AI governance framework. And this was, this resonates actually with something that the UST launched. They launched the National AI Strategy, or NICE-PH, early this year. It's envisioned to work hand in hand with the National AI Strategy Roadmap of DTI. NICE-PH has 5 pillars, so infrastructure, workforce innovation, ethics, policy, and deployment, all phased from 2024 to 2028. The government should establish a dedicated AI research centers focusing on the development of AI models capable of detecting disinformation. AI can be employed to improve integrity of elections by automating the process of scanning and analyzing large volumes of documents like statements of contributions and expenses and certificate of candidacies. The government should launch a nationwide media campaign for literacy to educate citizens about the risks of AI, and civil society organizations should take a proactive role in such campaigns. And just some last thoughts before I end. A few days ago, I had dinner with a group of friends, and we were talking about our children. One of them was telling a story about her son's mountaineering adventures and how nervous they made her. However, she said she didn't want to love her children from a place of fear. Now, AI is not my child, but I can see how the same sentiment applies to technology. I consider myself a techno-optimist, so I have a positive regard to where AI might take us. I'm also aware how it is of how it is being misused, but I do not want to accept AI because there is no choice, or worse, from a place of fear. Rather, I hope to embrace it as a tool, a vector, a force multiplier for positive change, and I hope you will too. So this is where I end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rodrigo. Before we proceed to hear from our distinguished panel of discussants or reactors, please note that we will have an open forum later. And for our on-site guest, we will request you to please use the microphone in the middle. And for our online participants, please submit your questions in the comments section. We will now proceed to hear from our discussants, beginning with Attorney Jamael Jacob, Director of the Ateneo University Data Protection Office and Legal Advisor of Foundation for Media Alternatives, followed by Dr. Dominic Ligot, Founder of Zerolytics, Chair of AI Ethics and Safety of the Philippine AI Business Association, and Program Lead of Project Sparta. And then from Ms. Gemma B. Mendoza, author of for Rappler, co-author of The Enemy Within, and a Jaime V. Ongpin awardee for investigative journalism. Dr. Jacob.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you to Doc Didith for recommending my participation, a small participation in this event, and for Mrs. Ongpin for approving the same. So for my 10-minute reaction, essentially, so I'm just going to divide it into two parts. One would be on the characterization of the problem, and then the latter part would be me giving some comments on some, not all of the proposed solutions, policy recommendations, or at least areas of intervention when we're talking about AI and disinformation. So, regarding the problem, people having a very close relationship with technology is a given. The nature of technology is that it really affects the way we do things. It either makes things easier or makes them more difficult. And this is true for AI too. And if we juxtapose this with the issue of disinformation, there is no denying that AI has definitely has affected or influenced the way disinformation is created these days. As their paper actually refers to it, it has supercharged the creation of disinformation. We are now able to create deepfakes and other false content easier, faster, more efficiently, and at a more cost-friendly rate. And then, with the help of the internet, another technology, and social media in particular, the propagation and dissemination of disinformation, of all information, including disinformation, has also been democratized. So more people now are making information, and more people are also getting information. But when it comes to disinformation, unfortunately, it tends to zero in on those among us who are most susceptible to lies, to manipulation. That's just the way things work these days. And for the different factors that make this possible, there are quite a number of them actually, but given my background, I'd like to highlight at least three. One is the large amount of data that we generate or create online and offline today compared to before. We create more information now than at any point in human history. And then second, the largely unchecked data collection, data processing being performed by big tech companies, big businesses, and let's not forget governments. Actually, until recently, governments were still the most data-hungry institutions in society. But now I think with Elon Musk and his tech bros, I think the private sector has overtaken the government in that aspect. And a big reason for that is the third factor I would like to highlight, which is the weak data protection laws that we have, or in some countries or some jurisdictions, non-existent data protection laws. And similarly, weak data protection authorities or regulators. So the result is a growing number of really serious and quite alarming issues that actually make plagiarism or cheating the least of our concerns. Because if you will remember, especially when we talk about generative AI, when it first became mainstream, if not early last year or the year before that, the issue or issues that garnered the most attention was all about these things, plagiarism, cheating. Also, no students now will not prepare their own papers, and our employees will now just submit work produced by ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on. But now, a few years later, we come to realize that the problems are actually far bigger. We see the loss of trust in the media, in leaders, in science. We see the weakening of democratic institutions, in particular our electoral processes, the rise of authoritarian leaders, and even violence and death. These sometimes also result from the improper use of AI. Maybe not directly, but inevitably we can attribute some of the blame to the improper use of AI. So that's the problem. Now, when it comes to solutions, their paper actually mentions quite a number as well, if not solutions, again, as I mentioned earlier, some areas of intervention. So I'm only going to touch on a few, and I'm sure my fellow reactors will also be able to look into the others. So first one is that prospect of actually using AI itself to at least address some of the negative impact resulting from the improper use of AI. Personally, I think this is a tricky proposition since actually one of the few things that critics and proponents of AI agree on is that AI is not perfect. AI systems make mistakes. Sometimes it's due to bad training data. Sometimes it's due to algorithms. Sometimes it's because of the inherent biases of the developers themselves. And then sometimes we just can't explain it, hence we have that phenomenon of hallucinations. So the jury is still out on this one, using AI to combat AI, because again, the limitations we see in the beneficial use of AI in other aspects, it is also present in this proposed solution of using AI to combat the bad uses of AI. Second, the paper also highlighted the need for human expertise when trying to address AI, and I think based on the sentiments of the respondents, actually there's already that belief that we have that expertise here in the Philippines. Yes, I agree that we need human expertise, of course, and I agree that we have quite a number of people here locally who have the necessary know-how regarding AI, but I don't think it's enough. We have enough people. There are a lot of false prophets, I would say, people who claim to know about AI, but actually don't. And it's not limited to AI. It's limited. It's also true for data privacy, wherein I work in primarily, and other technologies. I remember a few years ago, I was in the forum, and there was this staff member of a sitting senator at that time trying to define what big data is, in the process of explaining why her principal filed a big data bill. And she couldn't actually provide an accurate definition of what big data is. And this is also happening now with AI, not just here in the Philippines, but abroad. So the first thing, of course, that comes to mind is that if the people crafting laws, regulations regarding a particular technology don't actually understand what this technology is or how it works, then we have a very big problem in our hands. And this is not to excuse the regulators, because regulators too are often just as clueless. Right now, I think there are quite a number of government agencies already that have come out with policies, guidance, documents, advisories regarding AI. But I would invite you to look into them closely and see for yourselves, do they really add anything to the discourse? Are they really bringing the people closer to having a fuller understanding of AI? Because in many cases, I think they don't. It's just a rehash of policies that were developed earlier by their counterparts in other countries. Parang nagkakaroon lang sila ng parang arms race, which government agency is able to come up with an AI policy. Parang ganun. This is a good segue for another intervention, which would be for us to have ethical and regulatory policies. And yes, they are necessary, but the task is often extremely difficult. The pace with which technology develops and evolves is so fast that that regulations rather, can't really keep up. A multi-stakeholder approach, also mentioned in the paper, is important. Actually, it should be a basic requirement, but it is also rarely the preferred route if we look at how governments, regulators work. And then finally, regarding transparency being crucial to assigning a liability. So we know who to blame if something goes wrong when AI is not used properly. And to that, I would say transparency is good, but only if we can get those concerned to embrace it. Unfortunately, they tend not to. For instance, most, if not all, platforms that utilize AI in any context, not just politics, most of them reject calls for a better explanation of how they arrive at their decisions. And because trying to explain these decisions eventually brings the conversation to algorithms, and algorithms, they argue, qualify as trade secret and is protected by law. Making them public, according to them, is like giving away their secret recipe. So I'll limit my comments here first, and I'll be happy to participate later in the open forum. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. And I want to thank Professor Rodrigo for basically not just ringing the alarm bell, but giving us a call to action. I mean, this is not the first disinformation forum in existence. But I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to kind of examine exactly what we are dealing with. My position today might come as a surprise to some of you. So we'll see how this goes. So the paper Fighting Fire with Fire is a very timely exploration of AI's dual role. It's both the disease and the cure, as you already heard. And the authors, Prof. Rodrigo and team, I think they deserve credit for refusing a very simplistic narrative. AI is neither a savior nor a villain. It becomes either depending on the governance, the incentives, and institutional will. And we need to remember that framing. Because not only is that essential, it's also intellectually required, intellectually responsible. Because I've been to too many fora that kind of paints AI as the bad guy, or AI as the panacea to solve everything. So techno-utopia or techno-panic. And certainly Professor Rodrigo and team's paper tries to balance both. However, I'm a researcher in the disinformation space. So I would like to humbly contribute some additional points to augment the paper. And obviously, I was not one of the respondents, so consider me a late respondent by my reaction. Just a recalibration of some of the points. First, the paper correctly acknowledges deepfakes, but then the time frame has to go much faster. It is not a future problem. It is not an eventual problem. It's yesterday's problem. They are not tomorrow's threat. We already see AI-generated voices mimicking political leaders, fabricated videos. These are not speculative scenarios, as you've seen. We see news already being manufactured on our feeds in front of our eyes. This is a recent one of a burning truck in Manila, and it was completely pristine by the time the entire fire department arrived, causing traffic all over the place. So it's not just political deepfakes. Sometimes it's just jokes. But this is a threat that we need to deal with in real time. At the same time, and I need to underscore this, I think there is this hope that AI will help save us by detecting truth. But state-of-the-art AI, as I'm sure my colleagues will agree, is really deeply limited. There's a lot of false positives. Legitimate media is flagged as synthetic. I get a copyright strike on my face on Facebook from time to time, so apparently someone else owns my face. Or false negatives. This is more dangerous. You know, Facebook and TikTok will allow synthetic media through, despite their announcements that they will start tagging them. So this actually creates a paradox that I want to first underscore. The more we want to rely on automated truth detection, the more we risk wrongful censorship and successful deception, because we want to subordinate or outsource that to a machine. And the way AI works at the moment, can't say if it will improve, is we cannot rely on it to be our epistemic judge. It's not reliable enough. And if we try harder, we risk causing collateral damage to democratic discourse. I'll have an example of this at the end of my reaction. So this brings me to, I think, my humble contribution to the paper as an additional call to action. We position that the real crisis is not speech. It's not even lies. It's amplification. Today, the reach of paid disinformation vastly outpaces organic content. If you were to see disinformation on your feed, 99% likely it is an amplified piece of content. On Facebook, organic reach only reaches at best 5% of its followers, while a paid campaign can reach 25 to 100% of a targeted audience. And in disinformation, this generates 4 to 8 times the reach of equivalent organic misinformation posts. So disinformation is not just going viral. That's a misnomer. It's actually amplified by design and budget. It is an industry. It is a paid activity. The battlefield has therefore shifted. Disinformation is no longer simply the chaotic spread of bad ideas. It is a structured industry of influence for hire. It is a commercial marketplace. And that changes our response entirely if we accept that. When we attempt to solve this problem through truth detection, which is our favorite pastime, whatever it is, AI detection, moderation, or even fact-checking, which I certainly hold highly, unfortunately, we inevitably move the needle towards regulating speech itself, which is dangerous. This is a constitutional red flag, because freedom of speech is explicitly enshrined in our Constitution. even lies, are protected by freedom of speech. But freedom of reach is not. I think we need to disentangle those two. Our legal framework protects the right to express, but not your right to algorithmic megaphones, precision targeting, troll farms, or industrial amplification. So we feel the solution must now evolve, not from regulating speech, which we love doing. We try to regulate speech, but we need to regulate amplification. Because once the problem becomes industrialized, regulatory strategy must target infrastructure, not expression. So here's where kind of the big thing comes together. If we accept that AI at the moment cannot reliably distinguish truth from falsehood, and I'm happy to be corrected with more updated info if you have, and deepfakes are already now operational, and the paid reach, whether by ads or by trolls, vastly determines the dominant narrative, then the role of AI now changes. It should no longer be a truth police, because that's a Quixotic quest. Its role now is to help us detect coordinated manipulation, to look at artificial amplification, funding pathways, distribution anomalies, and not ideology, because that's a trap. The goal is not to silence people, even if we want to. The goal should be to detonate the economic engine of deception. This is a new conversation I've rarely heard, and hopefully we can have more of it today. Disinformation is not a glitch. It's an organized political economy. It's got payrolls, agencies, contractors, clients. It's a business. And if it is an industry, then a democracy must confront it as such. What do we require from industries? We need transparency requirements. We need audits, advertising oversight, financial controls. The same way we chase money launderers, we should chase these paid disinformation actors. Not through thought surveillance, which again, we love doing. It's he said, she said. So as we engage with this paper's central question, I'm nearly done. How can AI help combat disinformation? I propose we reframe the narrative. We must move away from policing what is said and towards regulating how it spreads. That is the crux of it. The AI should focus on not on detecting truth, because it's nearly impossible, but on detecting coordinated spread of falsehoods. The first question should be, is someone paying for it? Is it being artificially spread? Then we check, is it true? Because if we keep getting trapped with what is true, what is false, and again, lies are protected by free speech. They are. And just because something is true doesn't mean it should spread. Doxing, malinformation, these are truths that are best kept private. So the truth and false thing, unfortunately, and as I've seen, seems to be a dead end. So I want to end with an example, no? And probably a warning. It was as it was to me, for those looking to AI to be our arbiter of truth. DeepSeek is a Chinese company that developed a model that is faster and smarter than ChatGPT. It is. Just don't ask it anything politically compromising about China. So in this example, I asked DeepSeek to comment about the UNCLOS ruling and the 9-dash line, because you gotta ask it, right? And it didn't react. So I asked the same question of another AI, Perplexity, which I love, because it combines AI and search. And it answered it just fine. It even gave me references and sources, like any truthful AI should, assuming we trust Perplexity. So I went back and asked, what if I ask DeepSeek to summarize what Perplexity said? Kulit, no? So after confirming my humanity, DeepSeek proceeded to summarize the information, surprisingly. Basically admitting that the ruling against China was valid and their claim wasn't. So I succeeded. But then midstream, through the summary, DeepSeek seemed to realize what it was doing. It stopped and then deleted what it was writing. Bizarre interaction. This is currently trending on Facebook on my page overnight. So how is this possible? DeepSeek is like any large language model which answers questions and prompts. But there has to have been at least one more model, an agent that was monitoring my interactions And the moment it spotted something that went against its notion of truth, it intervened. We are alarmed and aghast at this because we don't agree with DeepSeek. But aren't we all wishing we had a DeepSeek for our own truth that would intervene when a troll posted something? Is that really what we want? So the question, can AI be a fact checker? Can we rely on it to enforce truth? And the answer is yes. But it will be the truth that someone decides for us. And that is very chilling. Thank you.
Good morning. I don't have presentations, but I have a few points to raise and went over the presentation and the article earlier. So as many of you probably know, Rappler was born on social media, and I would use the trajectory of social media to illustrate where we are now. So when we started out, we saw the potential of social media. We benefited from it. We scaled because of social media, and we've been observing how to use it, how to use technology for both social good and for also amplifying the content, the audience, like reaching a broader audience. What we realized towards as we were doing this is also technology, as social media, there are benefits from technology and social media in particular. There are also harms, and we saw that, we exposed that as we were observing what was happening ahead of the 2016 elections, when we saw the rise in hate, the rise in disinformation, manipulative behavior, and hate in social media. So AI is now in that same trajectory. When we saw, ChatGPT, when ChatGPT reached mainstream, we started, we looked at it. Actually, right before that, even before that, we've been experimenting with it. We looked at what it can do. We looked at what it cannot do. We saw that it's not, you cannot leave it alone, in fact, for content generation. And because of that, when we were developing our chatbot, we really actually ensured that we had guardrails in place. And even now, I still monitor the chat room where our chatbot is accessible to make sure that it is not, hallucinating. So on to what is, what might be, onto AI and what it's doing to the information ecosystem. So as the fact-check partner of Facebook and one of the pioneering fact-checkers in the Philippines, we've been observing really the rise of, since AI, generative AI became mainstream, a rise in synthetic content and AI slop on social media. It's drowning real content on our social media feeds. And what has been personally concerning to me is the fact that it has become really hyper-realistic and indistinguishable from real content. Last year, we were concerned about synthetic audio. This year, it's video. Video is now almost unless you're looking at it very closely, video can fool the naked eye. And even professionals are sometimes fooled by today's synthetic video. Many public figures have been deepfaked. Our own CEO, Maria Ressa, is a constant victim. Part of my role is to actually uncover things that are circulated about her. So the platforms were platforms promised that they will label AI content, and they have not been delivering. An audit of a group of forensic journalists found that hundreds of synthetic images and video hundreds of synthetic images and video reveal that platforms frequently fail to label content. And I have personally used the tools platforms introduce for uncovering their own fake. So since, for instance, which is being lauded by Google, is only effective for its own content. It does not detect other content. That's AI. And the same is true with the with what the other platforms produce. And your problem here is that AI, generative AI, is a language. It's not really a platform only. It is everywhere. And there's tools out there, there's AI tools out there that are not known to us, but are actually probably being used for generating deepfakes. So that's the bigger concern. Platforms are profiting from this. And I will anchor my points here on that, because when you're profiting, you need to be responsible for what you're profiting on. So what's worse is that instead of doing anything about it, they have profited. In the past couple of years, Rappler has been publishing and exposing the use of deepfakes in online advertising. I personally dived into Meta's ads library, which is littered with video impersonating public figures like Maria, Vilma Santos, Regine Velasquez. There's so many of them. You just get inundated. These ads exploit the vulnerabilities of people suffering from chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension, among others. Very recently, a Reuters report found that Meta projected to earn 10% of its 2024 revenue from ads for scams and banned goods. And in effect, what they did is, like, when they saw that people were clicking on the scams and that there's quite a lot of scams on their ads library, what they did is they charged suspected fraudsters more, instead of doing more than that, like investigating the source of all of these and making sure that it is possible to trace source and of all these deepfakes. I wish to add here something that is of a bigger concern for newsrooms. The rise of AI currently poses a significant and almost existential risk to newsrooms. Already, digital platforms have cornered the advertising space. Like, this has been happening for over a decade already. And what has happened with AI is, instead of leading traffic to the platforms of newsrooms, they're now cornering that traffic and advertising on that traffic. So Facebook used to be a top source of traffic. Now it's a poor third because it has kept the traffic to itself, more so with its own Meta AI. Google introduced AI overviews. And what does that mean? It summarizes content from various sites. And what that means is people will not go to those sites anymore because you're seeing the content already on your end. It is content theft. We think it is. And while platforms are making a killing from investments in AI, newsrooms are dying. And news deserts, or areas not reported on, are rising. News deserts are spawning grounds for misinformation and disinformation. When people don't know what is true, they will speculate. Media literacy is important, but we need more. We need platform accountability and transparency. So it was suggested that AI should be used to scan for disinformation and deepfakes. The thing with that is that platforms don't really share enough data. And they have actually been closing on data. We used to have access to something called CrowdTangle. They have replaced that. And what is now available is something that requires you to use a very limited laboratory space for analyzing content, but you can't really use tools you need to use in that space. And that is not enough. So for us to effectively regulate platforms, there needs to be policies around requiring them to disclose data, make data available, make their platforms, what their algorithms are amplifying available, and I mean auditable by researchers, by journalists. it is also important that the public is able to, have freedom for choosing where they go, what platforms are best suited to their own health and well-being. And that's not possible right now because our social networks are actually held hostage in these current monopolies. So basically, we stay on Facebook even if we hate Facebook because our social networks are on Facebook. So there needs to be policies around that. Data portability is something that has been chosen. The State of Utah actually has this Digital Choices Act. So those are some of the things that can be adopted by state and can be studied by our citizens, our civil society groups as ways by which we can hold the platforms accountable. And finally, may I just point this out? Content is not free. And we should accept that. Platforms need to be compelled to pay for content they profit from and content they synthesize to generate these AI responses. While innovation should be welcomed, guardrails should be in place and platforms should not be allowed to profit from content theft. This will ultimately kill that rich marketplace of information, art, and culture that AI is currently benefiting from. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentations, Attorney Jacob, Dr. Ligot, and Ms. Mendoza. At this point, we will proceed to our open forum. So again, for our on-site participants, you may use the mic in the middle to ask your questions. And for our participants online, you may submit your questions through the comment sections. So do we have questions from the audience here? If none, then I will ask the first question sent. Maybe Dr. Didith, this is for you. Your publication highlights the complex duality of AI as both a driver and a deterrent of disinformation. How do each of you interpret this duality from your respective fields, and where do your interpretations converge or diverge? Maybe start from Dr. Didith, and then, yes, others may also react.
Sorry, I need a moment. I need a moment to think about this. Okay, if I may go back to my what I consider to be my area, which is AI for education. AI is it's a driver and a, sorry, what was the question?
Driver and a deterrent.
And a deterrent. Okay, so it's a deterrent in the sense that, no, wait a second. Let's start with the driver. It's a driver in the sense that I think AI is helping us take some of the grunt work away from academia. Speaking for myself personally, one of the things that I have to do quite a lot is format citations, for example, which can be quite time consuming. So AI does all of that for me, and of course there are bigger examples. If you want to do like very quick overviews of dense papers, AI can do that very easily. But of course that comes with an intellectual cost, that if you do not have if you have not grown up with the discipline of reading things yourself and condensing things yourself, then you fail to develop that skill if you're overly reliant on AI. AI can be a deterrent in the sense that we have, of course, plagiarism checkers, which I don't really buy into so much. But I think maybe the deterrence as well is from this concept of, I mean, we've heard the metaphor of using AI as a crutch. We can use it to drive, to speed up the process of innovation and generating ideas, but that assumes that the people doing the innovation have built those core competencies first. If you overly rely on AI, then you're not actually sure about the quality of the innovation that you're going to produce, if it is, valid at all. So I hope that answers
Thank
the
you.
question. Maybe.
Other reactors?
I think as far as AI being both a driver and deterrent, I touched on this earlier regarding using AI to combat the negative effects of the improper use of AI. So I'll just, I suppose, reiterate that there is a need to be careful when trying to adopt this approach. I'm not saying we don't do it at all, but we just need to be aware of the limitations out there. And Doc Lee mentioned earlier about all these false positives, and so I guess I'll just complete my answer by citing an example. If you're not aware, for instance, in Facebook, parang yung first line of defense talaga of Meta when it comes to potential violations of its community standards, including disinformation and so on, AI is right there. So our NGO just last month, we posted right before All Saints Day, All Souls Day, parang, something warning people, reminding people to be careful during the holidays, that to take care of your passwords and so on and so on, so that you don't become a victim of scams, etc., etc. So that was the content of our post. Then overnight, we received consecutive notifications, like one, that our post has been taken down for violation of their community standards. And then next, without even giving us a time to react, the entire page was actually taken down for supposed violation, again, of the community standards. And then when we pressed on and inquired what violation did we commit, apparently we were committing a cybersecurity violation. We were supposedly asking people for their sensitive personal information, which is completely not true. So we were warning people against the dangers of scams, and their AI actually accused us of committing, or at least attempting to commit a scam, and without giving us any due process, went ahead and disabled, did not just take down the post, but actually take down our account. If not for our connection, since we have worked with Meta before, it would have probably taken us a long time before we had our accounts taken up. So that, I think, highlights again the limitations that I'm talking about. In that case, or in the case of Facebook, it is actually using AI to check on possible misuses of AI. But based on our experience, it failed to actually do that actual function. So yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Ligot?
Yeah, correction, I'm not a doctor. That is my name, though. I've been a doctor since birth. It's my nickname, Doc Ligot. Yeah, now you know. So disinformation yan, yung doctor. So in my work, I hearken back to a lot of past technology adoption. And the way I see AI, it's just the most evolved version of media. It's just the most evolved version of information technology. Remember, as early as the printing press, the church wanted to burn books because it challenged their control over information. And then later, the church became the largest publisher. It's the same banana with radio, with TV. It's always this issue of control. But I think before AI, even with social media, there was always two things that were consistent. One is there's always a human behind it. And second, the information tends to be static. As you've seen with my example earlier, AI now can write its own stuff and delete its own stuff based on some general guideline which may have deleted Attorney Jam's post. So the AI has gained agency. That's why I call it agentic. So I think that merits some attention. And second, I think via the platforms, as Gemma mentioned, we haven't seen this kind of monopoly of media even since television. That was the third characteristic of previous media. You obviously had a choice. You decided which newspaper you wanted to read. You decided which channel you wanted to watch, and you can always change. But now, by and large, everyone's hooked on the same three platforms. TikTok, maybe Facebook, LinkedIn, occasionally for work. So you've now been centralized. Second thing, just to add to that, the way social media has changed. We no longer call them social networks. You noticed? Because that's how they used to work. In other words, if you posted something, your friends will see it. And if they liked it, their friends will see it. So it's highly dependent on actual connections. Now, the way content is circulated, it's based on algorithmic matching. That's why you'll see posts by people you don't even know. But they might post something about cats, and you see it because you like cats. And the reason for that is because I think approximately, correct me, Gemma, 2008 was the time Facebook became an advertising machine. Before that, it was just a place to share photos and poke each other, right? But they were not making money. And then they had to implement a revenue model. And the most compelling one is advertising. And this points to the profit motive. And to maximize advertising, this content algorithmic matching system is what makes social media more potent than any other form of media, because it attacks you from a psyche perspective. They don't just look at what you like. They look at the sequence of stuff that you like. And based on machine learning, they know already, okay, since you've already liked sneakers and you bought a burger, you're probably going to love fries. That's how complex it is. So no human can make these kinds of decisions. So is AI both, that's how AI is a driver. Now, how is AI a deterrent? I feel the same mechanism. I mean, AI is not, as the paper, Dr. Rodrigo's paper said, it's not inherently good or bad. But I don't think we've actually sufficiently explored using these kinds of mechanisms towards fighting the disinformation. That's why our initial suggestion is go for the obvious. If there's money flowing, then that's obvious. And remember the difference between disinformation and misinformation. One has deliberate malicious intent. One is accidental. Most of the jokes and the satires you see online are accidental. Ironically, libel will probably hit the accidental misinfo. Some innocent random poster will get a case, while these basically organized criminals will dodge any legal action, because guess what? There is no law that will allow you to go after them. Libel and slander are individual, crimes. There's no organized libel. There's no conspiracy to perform libel, which I feel is a policy intervention that needs to happen. And maybe the last thought there is, I think we're all in agreement that things are not good. They're broken. And part of that is the market. The markets are incentivizing bad behavior. And the only cure to a malfunctioning market is policy, because policy doesn't distinguish between profitable or not. If it should be based on public good and norms. So we need policy to step in. Unfortunately, we're still a few steps away from actually coming up with a good disinformation law. And again, double unfortunately, most of those laws feel like censorship in disguise. So we have to be careful about that.
Ms. Mendoza?
I'm not sure about the driver and deterrent, but I would like to talk about the duality precisely of AI. So AI is useful. I mean, I personally used AI for a lot of things, and one thing I like using it for is for synthesizing what I've already written, things I'm familiar with, but I need to have a derivative content on. So it's very useful in that sense. But obviously, you need to review it, because otherwise it will just churn stuff that are outlandish sometimes. But the other thing, and in the case of Rappler, what we are seeing the use for it one thing we're using it for is really like surfacing information that we've written about before. So like in the case of our article, we have over almost, I think, 400,000 articles in our website. I don't think people know that it's quite as extensive, and we're a small. We're only over almost less than 15 years. We're turning 15 soon, I think. And then with like within those stories, there's quite a lot of nuggets of information that could provide context to the current conversations or current issues, and it's helpful that way, like because we don't have a lot of people that will synthesize that for our audience. But at the same time, again, if you just like looking at it from externally, like where you have this platform just scraping content from sites without actually paying them, and then also like synthesizing that content, so in a way that's I mean sometimes unattributable already, like you don't know the source anymore. That can be a problem, and that can foster not just disinformation as well, because or misinformation at the very least, but also precisely like copyright infringement already. So those are things to consider with respect to that. Like, do you really want an overarching super intelligent know-it-all, or do we want a space, an information space, where we know where content or information came from, so we'll be able to verify. So those are things I think that we should think about.
Thank you very much. And I think we have a question from our audience. Yes, Miss Yi.
Thank you very much. I have a question. With all this corruption that's being disclosed in our government, there's been a lot of brainstorming and idea generation among civil society organizations and so forth. No, is it realistic for us to think of an AI-enabled private sector or civil society database that will serve as a check for government activities? No, a lot of the corruption happens because it's all hidden from us. The budgets and how they manipulate it, the pricing of projects and how they deviate from master plans and so forth. So, I'm almost 70 years old and it hasn't changed in 50, 60 years, no? So with technology that's available today, is that realistic? Because I feel that governments change hands, no? We'll have a Pinoy government that drives down corruption to its bare minimum, and the next administration could just throw it all away. So it almost seems that we have to have a parallel watchdog, no, from civil society or private sector that can monitor and keep government honest. So is this possible with today's technology? That's first question. Second, unrelated ho. I've read many articles saying that AI uses a lot more energy than search and all that, no? The Philippines being an energy challenged country, does that mean that in the future, once that we will not be able to maximize the powers of AI because we're not energy, energy sufficient or energy rich? I don't quite understand the connection, because see, when we search in AI, I think it goes to some foreign data warehouse, right? With all these looming data sovereignty and protectionist policies coming up, will that eventually limit what the Filipinos can benefit from as far as AI is concerned? Thank you.
Thank you.
I will respond to the one about governance, because we've been trying to do that at Raptor. So, but I think I want you to look at it from this perspective. There's such a thing as structured and unstructured data. Unstructured data could lead to, like if AI is processing unstructured data, it can be more, it might not be more specific, and it might not be as accurate versus if it is accessing structured data that is properly, structured so that it understands, it's able to interpret it better. If you just slap on the current national budget and slap on AI on that, there's a big possibility that it will misinterpret that data. We tried because the current national budget is in unstructured format. So I download the GAA and the NAP every year, and a big part of it is it's text that is not even in tabular form. It's in tech parlance, it's strings, and some of the numbers that you see there might actually include characters that the system might misinterpret. You need to have that data first, and we need to press our government to make sure that data is released to us in structured format, in tabular format, that is easier and more accurate, that can be interpreted more accurately. That is part of, I think, the advocacy that everyone should, push for. But yes, you can use AI once you have that in structure, and we've been trying to do that over the years. We have years of NAPs and GAAs already in our database. We're hoping to have that out soon. There's a way to do that. To get to that point where then AI is telling you, hey, there's a difference between this period, this item in last year versus the current year.
If I may
Sorry.
add po,
Yeah.
I guess the computer science people have relayed that to us, and we were thinking that because of this controversy that's going on right now, and that the administration's back is against the wall and pressured to do something, there's this transparency initiative, right? There's the budget coalition and all that. So maybe it's a good time. There's an opening for us to take advantage of today's crisis to really push for greater
Real
transparency. And if that means that they have to organize their data in a way that we can use it, samantalahin na natin yung...
You don't need blockchain for that. You just need tabular data.
Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, on that first point, maybe just as an update to what Gemma shared, there's a group called Better Gov, recently formed, and we are actually doing that already. So there's certainly a lot of data that's obfuscated. So when you say obfuscated, yeah, you can get a PDF, but it's an image, so it's not something you can load into MS Word or Excel immediately. But I think the add-on there is large language models can read images and convert them to tables. It takes longer, but it's not impossible. So this volunteer initiative is doing exactly that. But then it might surprise a lot of people that there's actually quite a lot of tabular data that's just lying around. For example, the PhilJEPS database, the procurement data, it's there, 20 years of it. It's just so big and voluminous that you really need someone to sit on it and study it. But for example, Gemma mentioned blockchain. Even before this blockchain bill, apparently there's at least 10 blockchain projects that's already been implemented as early as, 2021. I don't know how they are doing now, but they're there. They're there in the procurement data. So it just needs a concerted effort. The volunteers at Better Gov are doing it for free. But yeah, certainly if we can put resources behind this and several other groups, there's a possibility. And then on I think the longer term, open data and freedom of information need to happen. Those are two different things, by the way. Freedom of information, I think, is inferior because you have to ask, while open data is just dumped by the government for public consumption by default. And ironically, other countries have very, very rich open data sites for transparency. On the energy question, you are correct. It's not a cost to us necessarily because those data centers that house AI are in California, they're in China, but it does prevent us from developing our own sovereign AI. And I think given the inherent bias in every AI system, I think it should eventually occur to everyone that the only way to counter that is to have your own vetted AI model. But these things are notoriously difficult and expensive to develop. Even the OST hasn't really kind of figured out how they're going to put resources behind it. But it's kind of tantamount to relying on another country for water, right? You can't do that. You have to be self-sufficient. So eventually AI becomes one of those key things. And that's also a matter of public policy. If AI becomes so indispensable for everything, education, technology, then it might be tantamount to calling AI a public good or a utility, like roads. We don't debate a government building roads, then everyone else builds on top of those roads. So again, these are all just fantasy at the moment. But the big roadblock, maybe a final point there is, we have the highest energy costs in, I think, Southeast Asia, if not the world, because we're one of the few countries in Southeast Asia that does not subsidize power. So that's something that's solely in the hands of the government. We deregulated power long before everyone else. Very murky, very long story. But in Brunei, for example, their electric bill has not changed in 20 years. Can you think of how much that stability contributes to their data center business, to their commerce? And we'd rather look at other things like maybe 20 peso rice or something, as opposed to looking at our electric bill. So I mean, these are again structural problems. That's why we're very low on industrial industries. We're very low on manufacturing, too expensive. And the only industries that grow are the ones that are not too power hungry, like BPOs, for example. That's not accidental. That's just in the environment we've created for ourselves. So yeah, it's a longer discussion, but it's less about AI dependency. It's more about our inability to develop our own, which I feel is something we should look at.
Actually, I was regarding the first question. Doc Ligot already provided my main point, which is again, we have to embrace open data and FOI initiatives if we have any hope of coming up with such a private, the backed database looking into government processes, government transactions, because a database would be useless if it doesn't have the data that we need. It's with government. So the only thing that I would add to that is we also have to be very, I suppose, familiar with how data protection works, because in many cases, and this is why data privacy or data protection gets such a bad rep, especially when we talk about FOI, in many cases, government agencies, I'm not sure if they do it intentionally, but in many cases, government agency invoke data privacy when trying to deny FOI requests or in embracing open data initiatives more. In many of these cases, the invocation of data privacy actually is unwarranted because they don't involve information about people. So that's for the first question. And then in the second question, also Doc Ligo talked about it, about, yes, confirming that AI does consume a lot of energy, a lot of water, in fact, because we need that to cool the data center. So maybe because of all the floods that we have here in the Philippines, hindi problema yung tubig. But energy, definitely. Mineral resources also. Labor, and for this one, siguro I would just recommend that if you get a chance to read it, there's this book, Atlas of AI by Kate Crawford. It's a very good book. And I was supposed to mention it earlier during my reaction. So as a suggestion for a future study, a follow-up study for Doc Didith's paper, their paper, because of that book, I became more appreciative of how big the impact, the negative impact of AI is. Right now, we are really very focused a lot on the use cases of AI, whether it's for good or bad. And we almost as if we assume that AI is there. But we have to build AI systems. And what does it take to build AI systems? And turns out there's a lot of problem there too. And we have to look at those issues too if we have any hope of adopting AI and making sure it actually works for us, makes our lives better and not worse. So that's it.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have another question from the audience. Ma'am, can you introduce yourself, please, and maybe your affiliation?
Hi, I'm Kayla Morales, just alumni from Ateneo. Thank you so much for the valuable insights. I just want to explore also about human intelligence and the youth. Right now, from what I remember, World Economic Forum report released that the most critical skills we need today in this AI age is critical thinking, curiosity, and creative thinking. But recently, PISA released also that Philippines, the youth in the Philippines, placed at the bottom in creative thinking and curiosity and learning from our youth. So my question is, how do we future-proof the next generation in this world of disinformation and AI? And I'm also asking that because the problem now is that the youth are majority of the youth is very much obsessed already with social media, video games, and mobile phones, and they're very much distracted from what learning really means, the grit and the repetitive learning that maybe AI is eroding from our schools and even at homes. So I think if we don't address this, we are raising one of the sickest young generations in history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's a huge question and a huge concern. I'm sorry to say that we don't only rank lowest in creativity, we also rank lowest in math, science, and English, if I'm not mistaken, from the PISA exam in 2018 and 2022. For me, the problem is so much more fundamental than just the use of AI, because our schools are under-resourced. We have schools with no electricity, no water. We have schools that many of our schools don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough textbooks. I think this was all brought to light by the group of Carol Markey in the EDCOM reports. There was a finding that over over a 10-year period, it's only grades 5 and 6 that had complete sets of textbooks. So, and then I remember during one study that I did about 2 years ago, we interviewed a teacher who was a math teacher, and just to illustrate the dire state of our schools, one of the subjects that she was asked to teach was relaxation massage. This was a math teacher because they didn't have enough faculty. So, if there are teachers in this room, how many of us would be ready to teach relaxation massage next semester, right? So I think that there is no simple solution to the complex problem of education. We have 23 million students in our public schools, and we have to somehow get them the resources, create these environments for better learning, more effective learning. If that means building more classrooms, we have a shortage of 165,000 classrooms. So we have to build more classrooms. We have to equip these schools. We need more teachers. And then in parallel, we have to talk about pedagogical approaches that are appropriate for these different types of learners, different levels of learners. So while I do agree with you that we're very distracted by video games, I plead guilty to that as well. And and our phones. The solution, I mean, the problem is quite deep and complex. So the solution is not just to sort of clamp down on the use of technology and AI specifically, but it's also just providing these very basic resources, and maybe that's where we start, and then we can solve the distraction problem as we go along. But if you don't have enough classrooms, teachers, textbooks, etc., parang I think we need those basics first. Thank you.
Yeah, some thoughts, because I'm also involved in education reform discussions. It's really touchy and messy. First, the stats. Unfortunately, we don't have PISA stats 20 years ago. Would be nice. Because for some reason, if you look at our literacy rate, like the original literacy rate, hasn't budged. We're still in the upper 90s. So somewhere there is the PISA translating to learning poverty. I think that's another stat that's also worsening. And then at the tail end, you have literacy. And then another thing that's really hard to disentangle is education and employment are interlocked. So you can't talk about education without eventually talking about labor. And right now, we are the world's largest supplier of nurses. We are the world's second largest supplier of engineers. We are the second largest BPO sector in the world, next to India. So if you don't mind me being blunt, for a country of supposedly dumb people, we seem to be the world's workforce. So again, somewhere along the way, those stats get messed up. Or another way of thinking about it is, yes, maybe for the broad population, education is worsening. But somehow we're able to milk so much from that upper echelon, maybe the top 5%, enough to power 20% of our GDP, OFW plus BPOs. So what am I saying? I think reform, as Dr. Rodrigo said, needs to attack it from multiple angles. We're not even talking about AI yet. Too much expectation has been asked from schools to become a labor production device. And I think that's also unfair, because schools aren't just there to produce workers, they're there to produce knowledge. And if you're worried about PISA, our contribution to research, that's why I'm very happy to see Dr. Rodrigo's research come out, is dismal. You know, everyone is behind their quota in terms of papers, because it's not a very conducive environment to write or to produce knowledge, or much less develop innovation. That's a bigger cost. I think over time, we become totally dependent. Another angle is back to the employment interlock. Too much of education is dependent on credentials. Like the earlier thing, like, am I a doctor or not a doctor? Does it even matter? Because most jobs still require a college diploma. So the mission of most students isn't even to learn, just to get that damn diploma so I can start working. And then let's add AI into the mix. So if you go look at AI being used outside school, it's actually very helpful productivity-wise, because you kind of have a purpose of why you want to use AI. Want to write better stories, want to create better art, want to optimize a process. In school, it becomes a plagiarism and cheating device. Why? Because the purpose has been lost. The purpose is to pass the quiz. The purpose is just to get the grade. And AI will optimize for the purpose. So I feel that's a little bit of a clue of where I'm also a teacher, need to work, reframe the purpose of education back to the fundamentals. What are we really there to teach the kids? And then the last point, this is the most contentious one. Much of education today is based on a framework called Bloom's taxonomy. Anyway, long story short, in Bloom's taxonomy, the fundamental building block is, let's memorize facts first, get info. So a big chunk of our 16 odd years in school is just acquiring info. Never mind if you understand it. Once you've acquired the info, then maybe you can synthesize it, and then maybe you can be critical about it. But we now have a device that knows all the info, and that's why kids just jump at that. Oh, just give me the answer. So I feel maybe, just like disinformation, it should be less about banning kids from asking AI to how does AI become an extension of you as a learner. Less need to memorize, but now you've freed up 12 out of your 16 years of memorization. Use that to develop your critical thinking. Actually, AI can be a really good tool to teach critical thinking. Unfortunately, our curricula, I mean generalizing, isn't written that way. Most of our curricula dates back to the 19th century. So we have to fix that. So anyway, those are just some semi-random thoughts. A long story, lots to. Maybe the 25th JVO lecture can talk about education reform. I think. No. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We only have time for one more question, and this was sent online for Ms. Mendoza. Are there ongoing efforts, programs led by Rappler, on AI's impact in news consumption?
Well, there's efforts around tapping AI for making information in our platform more available. That's the RAI. We have the RAI chatbot, for instance. We've also been using AI for looking at how we can make our content more visible in social media, in search results pages. Those are things that's out there. But I think part of what we are hoping to do, and it's a major project, is really looking at, again, you have all these databases, it was mentioned earlier. What if we can precisely use these technologies to make information in these databases more accessible? And that requires a lot of knowledge engineering, though, we realized, so that you can do it in a more consistent way and more trustworthy way. We have started the ontology project, which is starting from politics only for now, like where we structured the Philippine political system, and we're using that to improve the way our RAI is interpreting information about our leaders, about government, etc. It's not yet there. It's a lot of work. Yeah, and it means encoding a lot of things. So weird, but we hope to get there.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for questions. So at this point, I would like to invite our distinguished speakers to make their final statements, maybe 1 to 2 minutes each. Let's begin with Attorney Jacob.
Yeah. In my case, I guess, again, I would just reiterate the need to be more circumspect, I suppose, more cautious, find that right balance between, as mentioned earlier, like being very pessimist about the impact of AI and having a utopian view of the role of AI in our society. Because it's in that balance, I think, that we can properly navigate this future ahead of us with AI in tow. I think there is no turning back. It's not possible for us to say that because of all these possible risks that AI poses, then let's not adopt it at all. Good luck with that. So it's there, but it's also not about giving up. Like with social media, for instance, we've seen that of how it's almost impossible to rein in the negative effects of social media. But with AI, I think there is still that chance, especially with regulations still being thought about, developed these days. So finding that perfect balance, or not necessarily perfect balance, but that balance would be the best way forward for us to truly harness the benefits of AI while mitigating at least the risks that it poses.
Thank you. Doc Ligot.
Yeah, I want to end on a hopeful note. I wonder how many of you would consider photography an art. Raise your hand if you think photography is an art. Anyone who does not? It's one of my favorite stories. Photography emerged in the 19th century, and it was not considered art. Artists hated it because portraiture art, which is the most lucrative art at that time, was threatened by the photograph. So you needed to pose for months in front of an artist like Juan Luna to get your picture. Ngayon, a camera can give it to you in an hour or two. And it was resisted for a century until the hardliners probably all died. And eventually, creative photography became considered an art. Why? Because people saw that, hey, there is actually a human input to it, creativity to it. The machine doesn't do everything. So Juan Luna would have hated the camera, but Fernando Amarsolo, whose work was primarily famous in the 50s, he used photographs as his models for Dalagang Pilipina and all these paintings. So, but the punchline there is, if you look at all art, most art before the camera, it's like they were painting photographs. They were trying to be realistic. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, the Ninja Turtles, basically. They were trying to paint Rembrandt. And then after the camera, art became less realistic. Pointillism, Impressionism, a banana taped to the wall, that's an artwork. So rather than being an enemy of art, photography made art evolve. I think that's very hopeful. And rather than eliminating the jobs of artists, new forms of art emerged. So I feel, and now AI is threatening photography, the same way photography threatened art. And there's a contentious debate about whether AI art is art or slop, as they call it. I still see these recurring cycles again and again and again. So I feel that let's look at these past adoption trends. Sometimes it's brutal, sometimes it's transformative in a good way. And I feel there's a clue that if we learn to embrace a technology and look at it as a way of evolving ourselves, maybe that's the key. And again, going back to the debate on policing speech versus amplification, it sounds counterintuitive. But by proportionality, the majority of the fake news out there is by these organized players. And why haven't we gone after them? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am Mendoza?
Okay. I think, every technology has some benefit to it, and I agree with that. With what was said, I don't think you can stop AI at this point. It's out there. The genie's out of the bottle. What's important is really to keep on looking at. Looking at it with a very critical eye, and looking at where guardrails can be in place, and where harms are, where there's harm, like what harms it could do, and looking at how we can regulate, how we can introduce policies to manage or mitigate harm. And when we're looking at that, when we're looking at harm, it's important to look at power, money, who's earning, who's benefiting, proportionate harm, and looking at how to make sure that whoever is benefiting from harm does not enjoy impunity, and that we're able to hold them accountable.
Thank you. Dr. Rodrigo?
Thank you. I think I will end with just a thought about equality or inequality, equity. One of the things that we should be aware of is that AI has a tendency to create, has this what's called the Matthew effect. So since we're a Jesuit school, I will end with a biblical quote. So from the Gospel of Matthew, for to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And this is what AI is actually want to do. Those of us who know how to use AI will become better at using AI and will benefit more, will profit more from it. And those of us who do not know how to use AI will be left further and further behind. So when we make use of AI, maybe what I hope will happen is that we will think of these inequities, and we will use AI in such a way that it will bridge, it will reduce those inequities. Let's not. I think this is the opposite of what's happening in the big AI companies, by the tech bros. They are speeding on ahead with no regard for the inequities that are being created. And I hope that we here will not do the same.
Thank you, Dr. Rodrigo, and thank you again to all our new actors. To formally conclude our event, let us hear from Mrs. Maribel G. Ongpin.
Well, good afternoon. In case you didn't know, we're now in the digital age. For some of us, like me, we have been dragged here kicking and screaming, but it's here. So we have to deal with it. That's why I like the title of this lecture, Fighting Fire with Fire. From what I get from this very wonderful discussion is that we have to have guardrails. We have to have a policy that will be important to catch those who are doing the wrong things with AI. That's very important. And as Mr. Ligot said, look where the money is. Look where the troll farms are. Who's paying? Whatever. That's there. And the second thing that I heartily agree with is that we have to go back to the basics. Critical thinking will not come from artificial intelligence. You have to understand artificial intelligence with critical thinking, and that comes from grade school. Reading comprehension. Reading comprehension develops critical thinking. And that's what we are in dire need of, okay? So I will, with some effort and not too much brain power, we can learn what digitization is all about. If we cannot, then we let those who can lead us into how to deal with it, like what we have done here today. That's all I'm going to say. Belonging as I do to the age before the era, the age before the era of the past, but somehow still in the present, and therefore having to deal with digitization. We can and we will. Thank you to our lecturer and to our wonderful panel and to our audience and your questions. We are on the way to understanding and dealing with digitization. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those words of inspiration, Mrs. Ongpin. And thank you for spending time with us. We would like to take this moment to present tokens of appreciation to today's speaker. So we would also like to present some flowers to Mrs. Ongpin. Father Bobby will present the flowers. Oops. Before we formally conclude our event, we would like to thank the following offices and units: Ateneo School of Law, Campus Safety and Mobility Office, Central Facilities Management Office, University Marketing and Communications Office, Office of the Vice President for Digital Information and Technology Services, and Office of University Development and Alumni Affairs. Once again, thank you for your enthusiastic participation. For those who weren't able to join us, you can go through the Ateneo YouTube channel and access the recording of the lecture. We hope to see you again next year for the next Jaime V. Ongpin Annual Memorial Lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we would like to invite everybody also to a simple reception outside.